Hey, managers of the Super Conference. This is your commissioner, Tyler Burkhart, here with some Week 2 recap for you. We definitely saw some upsets this week. We saw some teams emerge and really shoot up at least my rankings, so we'll take a look at that. And because there was a lot of movement in the rankings, I don't want to spend as much time with the awards, so we're going to just get right to it and move quickly. So, best manager of the week, Tim Copeland. Great trade. Win-win for myself and Tim. He improved his running back depth. I improved some future talent and higher ceiling kind of players like with Ryan Matthews. He stuck with the Buffalo defense even though they gave up 40-some points to the Jets, and he put up the third most fantasy points. Good week for Tim. Bad week for Mike Hemmer. Didn't get the 40 points, plain and simple. Rough, start to the season for Mike. Hopefully his players can get healthy quick and he can turn around his season. Best matchup of the week, Portland and Green Bay. Portland's here for a second consecutive week. Kind of the theme here is both had running backs that because of injuries kind of stepped in, are really solid fantasy running backs now, and Michael Bush and C.J. Spiller. Came down to Monday Night Football. But Portland prevailed. But the really thing I want to highlight here is that I really like the class that Adam Wirt showed at the end of the week. He didn't whine or complain. Oh man, I put up the 5th most fantasy points and I still lost. My logic is you don't put the most fantasy points up for that week, you don't deserve to win. That's my logic. So what did he do? He congratulated Portland on the win and showed class. I like that. So I appreciate that. I wanted to highlight that. It was a good matchup. Upset special of the week, as predicted, Minnesota Bryans over San Fran Frenzy. He barely squeezed it out by about a point. Actually, both teams I thought were actually upsetting. Neither team got to the 80-point mark. But moving forward, both teams look competitive and solid. MVP of the week goes to Reggie Bush for the LA Quakes, put up over 30 points. He said at the beginning of the season that he would be the league lead in rushing. I'm not believing it yet, but it's just, at least he's backing it up. I appreciate that. Meanwhile, the fantasy duds of the week go to Andre Johnson and Darren McFadden for San Fran Frenzy. They were his 2 keepers to start this year, and they only put up 6.2 fantasy points. And that's going to be really rough, especially considering the fact that you only lost by 1.3. So, tough break for San Fran. All right, so now we're at the rankings. Before they start scrolling up and you can see them, just a few initial thoughts. First of all, we're only 2 weeks in. So, I'm not even looking at total points. I'm still just looking at the rosters. We haven't seen enough. RG3 is leaving all of fantasy in points scored. That is not going to continue. I guarantee it. Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are not even in the top 10 in quarterbacks for fantasy points. Once again, that's not going to continue. So just keep in mind, we're only 2 weeks in. Don't jump the gun. Second thing is remember, depth is important. I think a lot of people are just looking at the lineups, but remember, depth is also really important, and I'll get to that in a second. And the last thing to keep in mind is that for 2 years in a row, we've had a team that started 0-2 storm back and get to the playoffs. So as we look at those 0-2 teams, try to think of, which of those teams could make a run. All right, so let's get to the rankings. Indianapolis, still my #1 team. I'm going to keep them there until they lose, and I'm not going to even second guess it. I know Ryan Williams is doing bad, but the talent is there. I like it. #1. Now, the big movers of this week was Portland Car Ramrod and Green Bay Legends because of the Bush and Spiller factors. I then have Washington, Seattle, and San Diego kind of in their own 2-0. Kind of average teams, have had some good scheduling so far. So I'll keep them 4 through 6. But then I really want to focus on Oakland because I know Oakland's 1-1. I moved them up to 7. Obviously, Kelvin Johnson increases value here. I'm not going further on Oakland, though, than 7, and here's why. His depth is in my opinion, the worst in the league. When we get to buys or certain injuries where a player is going to be out 1 to 2 weeks with Frank Gore, that's probably going to happen. I don't know who he's going to put in. Look at his team. His bench is by far the worst in the league. And when we have those buys, I think he's going to lose because he just doesn't have the depth. 8 is San Fran Frenzy. I moved him down just because the offenses with the keepers, it looks like Oakland isn't running as well. They've had some line issues, it looks like, because Carson Palmer's scrambling a lot as well. And Andre Johnson, just in that Houston Texans offense, is just not the player for fantasy-wise that he once was. So because of that, I moved San Fran down to 8. And then the other big dropper this week was the Yankees. The Kansas City offense looks bad. Therefore, because of that, they're going to probably be throwing the ball a lot in the second half. I don't know if Peyton Hillis moving forward will get the carries that we once thought he will. But if Jamal Charles is hurt, that could change. So right now I'm going to keep him at 11, but he could possibly rise. I think it all depends on Peyton Hillis. That's a big question mark, but he still has a great receiving core. But, the other thing I was going to mention too is Chris Johnson, bad. I've seen enough. The Titans line shows you enough. Locker's running for his life. So that's another reason why, other teams I'm not going to jump the gun, but I'm going to make the exception there because we saw this all last year with Chris Johnson, and we're seeing it again this year. Okay, so now we move down to that 13 through 16 group. And the one team I really want to highlight here is New York Blackout. Their running backs include Benjarvis Green-Ellis, Stephen Ridley, Cedric Benson, Ben Tate. All 4 could start on a team. And I really think, he could keep that depth, and when it comes to the playoffs, I think he's going to, or not playoffs, but the bye weeks, he's going to look really good. Or he could make a trade and really find a team desperate for running backs and increase his lineup tremendously. I think either are fine plays. I really do. So I think he's in a good position. Bad luck to start. But I think moving forward, I think New York Blackout will be a team that will certainly rise. Could be that 0-2 team that makes the playoffs as well. All right, so let's move forward. Week 3. We got some awesome in-conference matchups. The one I wanted to highlight was Green Bay Legends versus Indianapolis Eyeball. Looking at this matchup, I really think that this will determine who could win the NFC East. I mean, it's probably going to be only a difference of 1 game. I see these 2 teams as the top 2 teams in the division. And Yahoo's predicting a 104 to 96 point matchup. So really a big game. I'm very intrigued to see who wins it. And even if Green Bay loses and goes to 1-2, I still think he'll make the playoffs. Okay, my upset special. Now this one's a bold prediction. It's kind of like, it's just one of those attention getters, like a guy on ESPN First Take, Skip Bayless. So I hate to, say it's kind of a Skip Bayless prediction, but I'm going to go Fargo and Bargo over Seattle Sasquatches. Now here's my logic. Obviously, we all know Seattle has 3 main players that he, bases his team on. Aaron Rodgers is going to Seattle. That's a very difficult place to play. Just ask Tony Romo about that. Gronkowski's going to Baltimore, who has some of the best linebackers. And McCoy is going to Arizona. And look what they just did to the New England Patriots. So, really 3 terrible all-on-the-road matchups. Meanwhile, Fargo has some really nice matchups, and especially if Charles is healthy going against New Orleans Saints, could have put up some big stats. Jets defense against Tannehill in Miami. And Cutler going to St. Louis, or playing against St. Louis. So I would like the matchups. I'm going to go on the limb and predict that. Otherwise, for the prediction challenge, Chris Pollock, Nate Burkhart, and myself got 6 of the 8 right. So we win just 5 FAB dollars since it was a tie, not the 10 usual. But I'll add that to your FAB accounts. That concludes the Week 2 recap. Hopefully you enjoyed, and best of luck as we move to Week 3. Game on.